Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Next chapter states, Babul Mashi ala al-Khufayni. Wiping over leather socks. Wiping over leather socks. I.e., the chapter concerning the legality of wiping over leather socks. I.e., in simple terms, is that it is from the deen, it is from Islam, it is from the Sunnah, it is allowed, it is recommended, it is encouraged for a person to wipe over leather socks. And some of the rulings pertaining to wiping over leather socks. The chapter of the do's and the don'ts. The chapter in which the most authentic, the most popular, the most basic, the most fundamental, and the most important narrations from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ regarding leather socks and making wudu and ghusl, wiping over them, taking them off, will be mentioned. That's what's meant by that. Now, a brief or a little bit of background with regards to al-khufan, leather socks. One may ask in 2024, what is a leather sock? And why would a person wear a leather sock? Obviously, in our time, in our culture, leather is an extremely important material. Depending on the leather and what type of leather and where you're wearing it, it's, I would say, relatively expensive. Authentic leather, genuine leather. And oftentimes, as well, depending on where or how, leather is a stylish material. And leather can make a fashion statement. And leather has an iconic symbolism. A leather jacket, leather gloves. Right? What's the first thing you think about when you see someone wearing leather gloves? What's the first thing you think about when you see someone wearing a leather jacket? A biker on a motorcycle, a hog, a Harley Davidson, right? With the fringes blowing in the air. Or you see somebody, maybe back in the day, with what we call a butter leather, all right? A leather jacket which is extremely soft, feeling like butter on toast. You think of somebody being smooth and cool and hip and fly, right? Sophisticated. What would you think of if you saw someone wearing a trench coat that was made from leather? What's the first thing you would think about them? They're part of a gang or gothic or whatever the case may be, right? The Matrix, whatever the case may be. A leather is iconic, for sure. A leather sofa, a leather interior in a car, right? And people who talk about cars and brag about cars and songs and movies, they just don't talk about the outside of the car, but they talk about the inside of the car. They talk about the upholstery. They talk about the insides or the guts. They talk about the seats, the dash. They talk about the leather detail, right? A luxury car versus the base model versus the luxury model. The base model has cloth seats, and the luxury model has leather seats. And we can go on and on and on and on and on talking about leather and what it symbolizes in our culture and books and songs and movies and poems, right? Why is leather such an iconic or symbolic or special material? What properties does leather have? Does it keep you cool? Does it keep you warm? Does it shine? Does it feel good? Etc. And where does leather come from? If you talk about the historical background, the context of leather and the different civilizations of the human race and the levels of development of the human race, pastoral nomads, forest dwellers, hunter-gatherers, etc., hunting animals and taking their hides, their leather, a cow, whether it's a wild or domesticated. When did these animals become domesticated, right? Wearing the skins of animals for warmth, for comfort, and for style, and for status quo, symbolism. Once again, only the king can afford this. Only a notable warrior can afford this. Only this priest or shaman can afford this, etc., etc. Only these people are allowed to wear this fabric, etc., etc. The difficulty of catching the animal, hunting the animal, and then you wear it on your head or your back as a cape or a hat. That's a symbol of your status and of your wealth and of your power. All right? So fabrics and where they come from, whether they come from plants, whether they come from animals, whether they come from domesticated or wild animals, leather, fleece, fur, so on and so forth. There's a long saga concerning things that we wear and what animals they come from. And of course, in our modern times, the rise of veganism. And not just not eating meat or things that come from animals, animal cruelty, but any type of product or material coming from an animal. And included in that is synthetic, organic leather. The new cars, the electric cars, many of them, if not most of them, no longer come with leather that comes from cows or comes from sheep or goats. But instead, it's a leather made from a plant, made from another type of material, so on and so forth, right? So why do we need to study rulings on wearing leather socks? Who wants to wear a leather sock? I can understand a leather jacket where I come from, but a leather sock? And the answer is very simple and easy, is that yes, the Arabs, they would wear leather socks. Why did they wear leather socks? Comfort, warmth, coolness, protection, style, so on and so forth, symbolism. And all of these different reasons behind the Arabs wearing leather socks will help us understand the rulings on wiping over or not wiping over, taking off, putting on other types of socks that are even more relative in our culture, in our time, and in our society. That's the whole point of this long introduction, is that the material and the fabric wasn't the thing which was intended. It wasn't the objective or the aim or the goal. But in most cases, it's the actual reason why a person is wearing this. So therefore, we're going to get to, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, other types of socks that a Muslim can or cannot wipe over. And how do we translate narrations, stories, happenings, incidents that took place over 1,400 years ago to 2024 America? Those who attack Islam, they say, this is too old, this is ancient. How are you going to apply what happened back then in the desert to the modern world today? So this is very important. These types of introductions are extremely important with regards to da'wah, with regards to Islamic identity, and how Islam never ever becomes old. All right. So therefore, the Arabs wearing these socks, and for one reason or another, they chose to wear socks made from leather. How breathable were those leather socks? Why did they wear leather? Why couldn't they wear cotton or wool or silk? Why is it leather? And are there any other narrations that speak on or talk about socks made from other fabrics? Inshallah, we'll get there. Tayyib. So Sanani rahimahullah ta'ala, he defines the term khuf. He says, وَالْخُفُّ نَعْلٌ مِنْ أَدْمٍ يُغَطِّي الْكَعْبَيْنِ وَالْجُرْمُقُ خُفٌّ كبير يلبس فوق خف كبير والجورب فوق الجرمق يغطي الكعبين بعد التغذية دون النعل وهي تكون دون الكعاب. So he speaks on some of the definitions of some terms or terms and their definitions. What is a khuf? What is a jawrab? What is a jurmuk? What is a na'al? And this is extremely important as well. Having the proper understanding and comprehension of these words before we even translate them to English. Because there are rulings that pertain to these words. With regards to prayer and wudu and ghusl. The Prophet ﷺ, did he pray wearing shoes? Did the Messenger of Allah wipe over shoes, or were they sandals? And is there a difference in the ruling? Was the ruling wiping over socks, cotton socks, silk socks, poly cotton socks, etc.? Was the ruling wiping over boots? Naam. طيب. So the first hadith, the author Hafidh ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, أن المغيرة بن شعبة رضي الله عنه أنه قال كنت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فتوضأ فأهويت لأنزع خفيه فقال دعهما فإني أدخلتهما طاهرتين فمسح عليهما متفق عليه. وللأربعة عنه إلى النساء أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مسح أعلى الخف وأسفله وفي إسناده ضعف. The first narration is the famous narration of Mughira ibn Shu'bah. Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhu. One day I was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he suddenly performed wudu. Fatawadda, he went to perform wudu. Fa'ahwaytu, so I bent down, I leant over, I began to lean down or just stoop down, to squat down, to take off his khufs, to remove his leather socks for him. Da'huma, he said, leave them be. Don't take off my leather socks, please. فَإِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْنِ, because when I put these socks on, I was in a state of tahara. I was in a pure state. This فَمَسَحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, and then he wiped over them. Then he wiped over his leather socks. And this hadith is agreed upon by Al-Bukhari and by Muslim. Hafidh ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, and there's another hadith collected by the four imams, and what's meant by the four imams, not Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmed, Abu Hanifa, but Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and An-Nasa'i. He says the four imams, besides Nasa'i, meaning Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, and Ibn Majah, they have a report that the Prophet ﷺ wiped over the top of his khufs and the bottom of his khufs. And this hadith, its isnad, its chain is weak. That second version of the hadith. Tayyib. So therefore, Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu anhu was traveling with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Messenger of Allah alayhi wa sallam wanted to perform wudu. He began making wudu. Mughira bin Shu'bah he kneeled down to grab the Prophet's khufs to take them off for him, to make it easy for the Prophet. So the Prophet wouldn't have to bend down. So the Prophet wouldn't have to put himself in an uncomfortable or discomforting position. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, thank you. Leave them be. I put these khufs on and I was upon a pure state. A pure state. Tayyib. Khairan, inshallah. Last but not least, the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, فَمَسْحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, he wiped over them. He wiped over them. So this hadith, before we get into the commentary, it is one of the most authentic and it is one of the most popular hadiths, and it is considered to be what is called أصل من أصول الباب. This is one of the cornerstones of this whole entire fiqh discussion from the Sunnah, not the Quranic verses, but this is one of the most primary hadiths concerning the permissibility and the legality that is mashru', it's legal to wipe over khuffayn. This narration of Mughira ibn Shu'bah, and there are reasons why, which will come bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And hadith also clearly states that the Prophet wiped over the socks, not just wore them, not just said keep them on, but he wiped over them himself, alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, let's move forward. The author, Hafidh ibn Hajar, he says, وَالْحَدِيثُ دليل على جواز المسح على الخفين في السفر لأن هذا الحديث ظاهر فيه كما عرفت وما في الحضر فسيأتي الكلام عليه في الحديث الثالث. He says here, or before we go that far, وذكر البزار أنه روي عن المغيرة من 60 طريقا وذكر منها ابن مندة 45 طريقة. So first and foremost, there are so many different routes, meaning isnads, concerning this one narration of Mughira. Another scholars have mentioned is that there is a plethora of companions who narrated wiping over the khufs. Some say 40, some say 30, some say 70, with regards to wiping over the leather socks. So this is something which is well known in the Sunnah, and the term used by some scholars, mutawatir. All right, طيب. Sanani says about this hadith is that this hadith here of Mughira ibn Shu'bah, it proves the permissibility of wiping over the khufs when traveling, whilst traveling. The hadith is clear concerning this point. As far as can you wipe over leather socks when you're home, when you aren't traveling, then the hadiths regarding that will come later, inshallah. They're coming, the third hadith of the chapter. Now, Sanani says that this hadith proves that the khufs can be wiped over while traveling, and that's clear, but it doesn't prove that the khufs can be wiped over while at home. I humbly disagree with this. Just because it's mentioned that they were on a trip or a journey, it doesn't mention anything pertaining to it being specific to traveling. And it doesn't mention that it's exclusive to traveling. They were on a journey, and that's when it happened. That's when it took place. And there are many different sunnahs that took place on a journey. And it doesn't mean, nor does it necessitate that it's exclusive to a journey, but it happened to take place, the Prophet told the companions, when they were traveling. Now, one may counter this argument by saying, well, the proof that it's specific to traveling, this hadith, is that the asl, the default, is that a person is to wash his feet and not to wipe socks. So therefore, to take the ruling away from that asl, that default ruling, you need a proof. And the proof is only talking about traveling. Wallahu a'lam. Moving forward. وقد اختلف العلماء في جواز ذلك فالأكثر على جوازه سفرا لهذا الحديث وحضرا لغيره من الأحاديث. قال أحمد بن حنبل فيه 40 حديثا عن الصحابة مرفوعة وموقوفة. وقال ابن أبي حاتم فيه عن 41 صحابيا. وقال ابن عبد البر في الاستذكار روى عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المسح على الخفين نحو من 40 من الصحابة. ونقل ابن المنذر عن الحسن البصري أنه قال حدثني 70 من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه كان يمسح على الخفين. وذكر أبو القاسم بن مندة أسماء من رواه في تذكرته فبلغوا 80 صحابيا. والقول بالمسح قول أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام هكذا هنا في هذه النسخة. وسعد بن وقاص وبلال وحذيفة وبريدة وخزيمة بن ثابت وسلمان وجرير البجلي وغيرهم. قال ابن المبارك ليس في المسح على الخفين بين الصحابة اختلاف لأن كل من روي عنه إنكاره فقد روي عنه إثباته. وقال ابن عبد البر لا أعلم أنه روي عن أحد من السلف إنكاره إلا عن مالك مع أن الرواية الصحيحة عنه مصرحة بثباته. وقال المصنف قد صرح جمع من الحفاظ بأن المسح متواتر، وقال به أبو حنيفة والشافعي وغيرهما مستدلين بما سمعت. Sanani then says, and the scholars of Islam, they differ on this. They differ over this issue. Most of them hold the view, most of the scholars hold the view, is that it is lawful to wipe over the leather socks when you travel because of this hadith. And it's also lawful, it's also permissible to wipe over these leather socks when you're at home because of other hadith, other proofs, other evidences. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala said, there are over 40 narrations concerning wiping over the leather socks from the Sahaba and from those who came after the Sahaba, different narrations. Ibn Abi Hatim rahimahullah ta'ala said, there are over 40 narrations from the companions. Over 40 companions narrated this. Ibn Abdul Barr said in Al-Istidhkar, there are over 40 companions who narrated from the Prophet ﷺ the wiping over the leather socks. Ibn al-Mundhir rahimahullah ta'ala quoted Al-Hasan al-Basri who said, over 70 companions of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ told me how he wiped over his leather socks. Ibn Umanda rahimahullah, he mentioned over 80 companions. Sanani then says, wiping over these leather socks, it is the opinion and the view of Ali radiallahu anhu, and it states here Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, Ali, and afterwards it says alayhi salam. And obviously that's a discussion. What's the ruling on singling out Ali with the statement Amir al-Mu'mineen, and what's the ruling on singling out Ali with the statement of alayhi salam? No doubt Ali radiallahu anhu is Amir al-Mu'mineen, and no doubt it's permissible to say alayhi salam for someone besides a prophet. It's permissible, there's hadith regarding that. But specifically pointing out Ali and calling him that and giving him that title, alayhi salam, no one else. That's a long discussion. Sanani rahimahullah ta'ala, that's a long discussion. The different scholars in Yemen, that's a very long discussion. طيب, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, Bilal radiallahu anhu, Hudayfa, Buraidah, Khuzaymah ibn Thabit, Salman, Jarir al-Bajri radiallahu anhum, and many other companions. They also have this view, is that you can wipe over the leather socks. Ibn al-Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala said, there is no difference of opinion concerning wiping over the leather socks amongst the Sahaba. Any narration that says the companion said, don't wipe over the leather sock, you shouldn't wipe over the leather sock, you can't wipe over the leather sock, then there's another narration from the same companion that says the opposite, that you can and you should. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, I know of no one from the Salaf who rejected and repudiated or criticized wiping over the leather socks, except for that which is mentioned from Malik. Even though Ibn Abdul Barr says there's an authentic version of Madhab Malik that he said you can do it and you should do it. So yeah. Ibn Hajar, the author, he states is that many great scholars of hadith have said that the narrations concerning wiping over the leather socks are mutawatira. And for the meaning of the term mutawatira, please go back to our explanation of Nukhbat al-Fikr, also by the author Hafidh ibn Hajar, and Tadhkirah fi Ulum al-Hadith of Hafidh ibn Hajar's teacher, Ibn al-Mulaqin. طيب, Sanani says, and this is the view of Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, and others, using the proofs that you've previously heard. وروي عن الهدوية والإمامية والخوارج القول بعدم جوازه واستدلوا بقوله تعالى وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين قالوا فعينت الآية مباشرة الرجلين بالماء. واستدلوا أيضا بما سلف في باب الوضوء من أحاديث التعليم وكلها عينت غسل الرجلين. وقالوا والأحاديث التي ذكرتم في المسح منسوخة بآية المائدة، ودليل على النسخ قول علي عليه السلام سبق الكتاب الخفين، وقول ابن عباس ما مسح رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد المائدة. And then Sanani mentions other scholars and other groups, other schools, which many and some will call the unorthodox schools or the non-traditional schools, the Hadawites, Hadawiyah, Imamites, Imamiyah, and also the Khawarij. And this goes to show and prove is that the Khawarij held different views and opinions which were peculiar, strange, unorthodox, outside of the issue of deeming a sinful Muslim to be an infidel, apostate, and refuting intercession, and thereafter rejecting different hadiths, and of course rebelling against a ruler that was sinful and apostate, etc. And of course, who are the Khawarij? What makes a person from the Khawarij is a very long and momentous discussion. And in many classes and lectures, we have warned the ignorant fools from going head first into the discussion of Khawarij. This one's Khariji, he's from the Khawarij, 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 Khawarij. We have warned the ignorant fools from doing this. And we have warned these ignorant fools from being politically used by clearly corrupted political regimes, let alone different regimes which are clearly outside of the fold of Islam, from being used by that rhetoric and their propaganda of calling anyone and everyone Khawarij, even though they're not from the Khawarij. They do not believe in the Aqidah of the Khawarij, but they have some criticism of the government or of the political regime, whether that criticism is right or wrong, but they have criticism. This leader is not the Prophet. This leader isn't a Sahabi. This leader is clearly, publicly, outwardly evil and wicked and corrupt. And you're telling me if I say anything that goes against what he wants or what she wants, then I'm automatically from the Khawarij. Obviously, that's stupidity and nonsense. And of course, that ruler is going to use and abuse that monopoly. That's a long discussion. What's important is, for sure, there was a group, an ancient group, there's no doubt, factual information, called the Khawarij. And this group opposed Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahl Hadith. They opposed the Sahaba and the Salaf and many issues of the religion. And from that is the wiping over the leather socks. And that is why you'll find in different books, which are considered to be, in general, Kutub Aqidah, Kitab al-Sunnah lil-Muzani, Kitab al-Sunnah lil-Humaydi, Usul al-Sunnah Ahmad al-Humaydi, blah, blah, etc., etc. And they mention, وَنَرَى الْمَسْحَ عَلَى الْخُفَيْنِ. They would say, and we believe wiping over the leather socks is lawful. And we believe wiping over the leather socks is permissible. And we believe wiping over the leather socks is from the deen. And not as some people think or feel that wiping over the leather socks is an issue of Aqidah. It's not a matter of Aqidah. But as they mention wiping over the leather socks, because they were mentioning their general way and how they oppose these people, these Khawarij people, and from that which they oppose them in is this fiqh issue. And of course, there are other things as well, such as rebelling against the Muslim ruler, which isn't a Aqidah issue, is a ruling. Is it lawful or unlawful to rebel against a sinful ruler? Is it halal or haram, recommended or disliked? And the Khawarij, they made this their practice. They made this a thing that they kept doing. They kept practicing. So the people of the Athar mention that we aren't like them. We do not agree with them. We do not condone this act. We do not approve of this behavior. Tayyib, khairan inshaAllah ta'ala. Wallahu alam. As I said before, that's a very long discussion. And of course, there's discussion with regards to what is the ruling on reading and studying these different unorthodox madhabs and these non-traditional madhabs. And if and when they differ with the traditional madhabs, do we have to consider what they have to say? Do we have to listen to what they say? Do we have to, is there khilaf? يعني يعتبر? Is there a difference of opinion? Does it matter? Can it harm ijma'? That's a usuli discussion, a comparative fiqh discussion in itself. Khairan inshallah. These other scholars, they say no. They say that a person should not wipe upon the leather socks. And obviously there's an argument that they have. And we won't mention that argument right now. That's a long argument. What's important is the main traditional orthodox argument and its proof. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.